Brett Buzzers. Good morning. Welcome. How's everybody today?
Doing all right, man.
It's early.
Freaking raining. It's damn early.
Yeah, it is. It is. We all need the coffee. Today, I want to welcome one of our guests, hosts, someone that I go way back to. Beginning, I believe, at our early studies at Humpty Dumpty Nursery College.
Yeah, that far back.
Yeah. Migrating up to memories of, let's say, driving in Ford Probes, listening to Randy Rhoads licks.
Yeah, and a lot of Rush.
A lot of Rush.
A lot of Ozzy, a lot of Rush, a lot of Sabbath.
Playing in numerous jazz ensembles and throwing Wendy's Frosties off of moving train cars. I'm speaking of Candlebox's very own, my good friend, guitar extraordinaire, Brian Quinn.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on the show, everybody.
Thanks
for coming on, Brian. Awesome. So, I guess, one of the things I wanted to get into today with you guys is how you sort of look at this idea of motivation, drive, perseverance as success for musicianship, and how you guys have done that, over the years,
Yeah. I get asked about it pretty often. Really, it's just, it was never anything I felt I had to do. It was just one of those things I just did because I loved it, I guess. It would, I think the hardest thing, especially with the music industry, I think is staying in it. That's the biggest thing to me was, just dealing with everything you got to deal with. I mean, it's a lot. So, just being able to stay in it and keep getting up, because there's, as you know, man, it's not a very forgiving industry. So staying in it and just, I don't know, I'm kind of on that end of it as being a road dog. So I've just been traveling and doing all that since I don't know anything else. You know what I mean? It was never like, oh man, I want to have a mansion and sports cars and this and that, and it's like those days are long gone, man. But I just loved it almost to a fault. I'd say it probably is the best way I could put it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like when we were kids, right? I mean, we had this thing, and I know we all kind of shared it, of like having this dream, of just kind of being like this famous guitar player, rock star thing,
Yeah.
And I mean, is there a point where it just like you start to realize that doesn't even exist, or does it exist anymore, where we have, or is there something where you have to realize that it's more about like the work? What I'm trying to say? And
that end does. I read an article with Zach Wilde. It was just in the last couple of days, and he was like, I have pictures of Jimmy Page on my wall and Randy Rhoads and this and that, and he was like, that's the reason I'm doing what I'm doing. And it kind of, he didn't really explain it, but it explained a lot, because I was the guy and you were the guy with Randy Rhoads on the wall and Slash and Steve Vai and, all those dudes. And that was like the motivation for it. It really wasn't, at least in my mind, it was never to get rich or anything like that, but definitely to get yourself out there and, have people recognize and appreciate what you do. It's every musician that says that they're not looking for validation is full of shit.
Yeah,
right.
But just doing what we do because, you bare your soul. You do, like if you're writing or playing or everything, and you're getting out there and standing in front of a ton of people, and just you're being judged. You know what I mean? So it's you strive to be your best and do your best at it. That's probably the toughest part of the whole gig. The other stuff is all very manageable, but there's just getting out there and doing it. And that's the hardest part of it, is getting out there and doing it. That's where, that kind of separates people.
To some extent, I think some of that though is part of you as a personality. For me, I know when I was a kid, I had all the posters and everything, but for a lot of people, it stops there. Like that whole, like getting yourself out there thing, I think is either instilled in you as a person or not. I mean, for me, without the whole internet and all that kind of stuff, it was me going to all the local record stores and music stores and putting up, the sheets of paper with the tags on the bottom. If if interested in being in a band, call this number.
Right. Oh yeah.
And I do that over and over. It didn't matter that I found somebody to play with. I just keep on doing that over and over with, because it was just this thing within me that I wanted to play with people, man.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it wasn't about being in my bedroom and rocking out and looking at the posters. It was more like, yeah, let's get out there and push this thing.
Yeah. And that's it too. I mean, that's putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
You know, whether, you know, and that's, you got to start somewhere. And that's the other thing I always think about too, you know, like Guns N' Roses and Zach and Ozzy and all those guys, like they all had that similar drive. They put themselves out there. They, you know, did their best and just, they wanted to be there, just be in rock and roll and be out there doing it. And I think that's really the hardest part, is just motivating, getting yourself motivated enough to go out there and do that, you know. But yeah, it is a drive for sure.
Does it get tiring? I mean, do you get to a point where it's like just that the energy levels it takes to kind of always get out there, or is that not even part of the equation?
Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, I feel tired all the time, but I'm never tired of it. You know, I don't mind being sleep deprived, but yeah, if you're asking, do I get tired of the actual life and being on the road and everything? Nah, I love it. At least today, sitting here right now, there's nothing that I don't love about it. I've been a road dog for a long time.
And even if you feel that way at times, as soon as the lights go down and all of a sudden the crowd's there, that all goes away anyway.
Yeah. We're standing back, ready to walk on stage. I think maybe in Tulsa. It wasn't long ago. It was like a run or two ago. And when the lights go down and they start our intro music and you hear the whole crowd just go nuts, I turned to our other guitar player. I was like, that is one of my favorite sounds in the world. You know, and it really is, because that's your stomach drops. It's like you're on a roller coaster, and then you're just going to, you know, go out there. I got to settle myself down before I get into it.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't want to see me in a situation like that. I was sitting there. He's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about.
Curled up in a fetal position.
Yeah. I'm like, I gotta do what? I gotta play, you know? What is this thing? I can't do this. I can't do it. Seriously though, I'll tell you, one of the things that you guys mentioned is like that, you know, when we were kids and playing and practicing, we had like, you know, there was a period I think we all went through where we were in the training mode for performance, right? So we were literally playing, as we discussed in past episodes, hours and hours and hours, you know, getting us ready for that thing.
Yeah.
For me, that was very dangerous, and I'll tell you why. I think a lot of reflecting back and think about like you guys who, you know, your workhorses, and you get out there and your network and stuff. For me, the practice part for me became dangerous. There's a negative consequence to it, and I got so into my head and so into the innards of music and theory and technique and things that when it was time for me to, you know, say, all right, now I actually have to like put the guitar down and get into the business side of things, I didn't have the skill set.
Yeah.
And I think that was, you know, looking back on things, one of the reasons why performance-wise I chose not to go that path or was just never successful is because, you know, that was something I didn't build up. And it seems like there's a certain balance you need to maintain, right? You just can't, you know, like Vi said that, you can't just stay in your room locked away for hours, and you know, there's a certain point you got to get out of there and actually get on stage and start playing.
Yeah, you know, I guess you do have to find a balance. I mean, moderation with everything, right?
Yeah.
Because but you were back in shit, man. That had to be 6th grade, right? 6th, 7th grade. I mean, you were putting in hours like that constantly. Now, for me, it was a little bit later. Like it was more, I guess, I had already done some road stuff with like Burial Ground and like those early hardcore bands that I had, but I wasn't it was later on, man. It was probably even well into college that I just sat and buckled down and was like, I want to learn how to play this thing.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, taking classical. I went in for classical guitar for there, but there was just going into the classical guitar major and just a music major. I realized how much I didn't know. You know what I mean? Like there was stuff I did know, but there was just so much that I just wasn't prepared for, you know?
You're talking like when you went to Westchester, like this?
Yeah. Like, you know, the ear training and the voice classes and piano and all this other stuff. I was just completely blindsided by that. And that's like, you always seem very level with that as far as putting that time in. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, but it's not, I don't think you made a bad choice. You know, it's just,
No, it was different.
Well, here's a question, Tony. When did you actually first join your first band?
Oh, I don't know. But Brian actually probably remembers this too. Well, our friend Tommy Winder, who passed, he was, I think, Brian, you probably could speak to this too. Tommy was probably very instrumental in getting all of us to play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
right.
Sure. Yeah.
Because he was so good at such an early age.
Yeah.
You know, and seeing somebody like, I remember working with Tommy probably when I was like 8 or 9 or something. Because you started, Brian, what, like around 8-ish is when you started guitar. Like that's when we all kind of came into it. Like,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I picked it up when I was like 6, but I didn't take lessons until I was about.
Yeah, and we took lessons at the same place. I remember, you know, we were like studying with, you know, different teachers. So, Aaron, I think it was probably, I want to say 12-ish, 13.
Okay, and then when did you actually start performing the same
time?
Band?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in those days, performing was kind of like a really relative term, right? I mean, we were just got out, and I remember one show I did with Tom Winder. We just played in the bottom of a church bazaar, or in a church gig. Yeah, you know? And the only reason we did it is because we were trying to impress these girls that we went to school with.
Of course,
you know. So
we're sitting down,
we're playing Metallica, you know. And then that's the irony. We're playing Metallica at the bottom of a church, you know, church play, you know, at St. Rocco's Church. I'm blasting one, you know, and everybody, and people are in there and getting the high. That was probably the beginning of that. But in terms of more serious playing, I don't know. 17, 16, 17.
Okay.
Yeah. It was probably around there for me, about like 15, 16. I was involved with the hardcore circuit. So we would play like church basements, and we did the Edwardsville Fire Company and like fire halls and stuff, like anywhere that they would let us have a show, that as long as there wasn't alcohol involved, you know. So
see, that's what I was talking about the other week on the other episode is you know, anytime that I find somebody who's actually made something of themselves at a young age, no matter where the venue, you're willing to play it. It doesn't matter if it's the VFW or the fire hall or Boy Scouts or wherever it is. It's a matter of like, hey, there's a possibility for us to get in front of some people and get some experience. Let's do it.
Well, it's not a job yet. That's the other thing too. You know, I think, I mean, and Brian, I don't know how you feel being, you know, so you're so in now with this, but does it feel like there's a point where it changes over or becomes more job oriented? Because I know when we were kids, it didn't feel that way. Like we got in front of crowds because that's what musicians did. It's a performance art, you know, it's you know, and when we go professional, it's like, I don't know. I think maybe I was kind of freaked out by that whole thing. That could be the other thing why I went more of like an academic route with teaching and stuff. But like, I think that, like I talked to Jeff Berlin about this, and he says, you know, like people who have lasting power, you know, are guys who, you know, like you said, are the road dogs, that they're not looking for the fame and the fortune. They're just playing out constantly. They're always working.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And that's it. And no, I'm not it is a job for sure. It definitely made a turnover, but I turned it into a job probably like maybe mid 2000s, like maybe after Octane. Like Octane was a blast. I made a ton of money with those guys. It was great. And we just played regionally. I was home in my own bed every night. But then with Foster Child, we toured a lot, and I found myself babysitting more than, you know, concentrating on the playing end of things. Just with the other guy, and I loved him. It's not a knock on him. It just was the reality of the situation. So that's when I dissolved that band, I really buckled down to just go out on my own and just do hired gun work. And and that was it. Just stay working. You know, even when I'm home off the road, I'm doing acoustic gigs around Philadelphia, and I just want to stay working. So yeah, it did turn into a job then. I will say this: the party was done with when I did decide to make it a full-time job, because nobody wants to deal with, especially a hired gun situation. Nobody wants to deal with anybody that's a liability and, you know, drunk, and, you know, you guys know what I'm talking about. So it's like, the three things I always say, they're like, well, you work a lot. How do you get all these gigs? I was like, well, I'll tell you this. I'm always on time. I'm always sober, and I'm always over prepared.
Right.
It's like, if you do those three things, you'll never stop working, in music at least. I maybe in other things too, but it's just what I know.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole essence of professionalism, is like, be there, do your thing, be great, you know, and then and be reliable, and do it reliably, you know. Hired gun stuff, I think is interesting, you know. I've talked about this in the past, where I think, you know, for me, I would love to see the hired gun studio guy come back. And I know that's just not a possibility anymore, you know, but like that for me was always fascinating. Like the Steve Lukather's of the world. Man, damn, those were gigs, you know?
I mean, they're out there, man. I do probably half of my income is doing session work. So it still happens. And I'm able to do it, luckily, from home most of the time.
Right.
But I kind of tapped into that whole Nashville world, and our rehearsal facility and storage is down there. So I just got to make friends from spending all the time in Nashville, and down there, man, it is nothing but music, nothing but sessions, nothing but gigs. You're surrounded by music 24 hours a day down there. Yeah. So it's still, like I say, half my income, but it's still relatively new for me. Like, it's completely uncharted territory, only because I spent so many years on the road. Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking a question like this, I always found this kind of fascinating too. Like, so you're based in Philly, is that? Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the decision to kind of stay localized in that sort of that hometown? You know, when, you know, like back in the 80s, we were saying, if you want to be a famous musician, you had to go to LA, you had to go to New York. Do you find it more advantageous to kind of stay where you are rather than going to like the major places or Nashville and doing the work?
Yeah, well, I mean, just even coming to Philly from, you know, when I moved down here, I was still 17. It was really to go to school down here, but Philly always has had a really great history and rich history in rock and roll. So there was always cool venues down here to play. I met amazing musicians, and even musicians, some guys I know that were in LA paled in comparison to the guys that I met in Philly. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
World class players here.
Okay.
And I just ended up staying here, and obviously, you know, I met my wife
right.
in college. Right. So, and she's from South Jersey, just over the bridge from downtown. So that kind of kept me here as well. If it wasn't for her, I probably would have been in Los Angeles.
So what do you think? We're in a musical environment industry today where literally you can stay in a localized area and still kind of, you know, through technology, through the networking, through travel, you could still get to the same level of you know, gigs and national acts. Like, does it have to be the city living in New York, living in LA anymore? I've heard that has drastically changed, you know, and always shifts too, right? You know.
Well, you said, Brian, that you do a lot of work out of your place as well, right?
Yeah, that's just because of technology. Like before, if you weren't in LA or weren't in Nashville, you weren't getting gigs.
Right.
It's session gigs, I should say. But yeah, it's the same thing. I do a lot of remote stuff. I'll work either out of here, or my buddy Paul, who lives right around the corner from me, he plays guitar for Get the Let Out at the Zeppelin tribute.
Oh yeah.
So his studio is just loaded with vintage guitars and amps. So I work out of that studio a lot, only because I have so much. It's like a candy store for us, and you know, so just any year Marshall you could imagine, and he's like Rain Man, so he's able to fix all this stuff as well, and just a ton of guitars over there. So I work out of his studio quite a bit. But yeah, just doing a lot of satellite stuff. Good. I've at least built up a reputation with producers that they trust me, and we could do a session like this, like a Skype session where they're in the studio. It's like, hey man, and you know, where I'm sending them my takes in real time.
Right. But
I've built up enough trust with them that I'm going to get the job done for them. And if I don't, then they just move on to another guy. It's just, that's what the session world is. You know, you can't get butthurt over that stuff. Yeah. I just give them a pile of tracks and use whatever you need, cut it up, whatever, you know.
Yeah, it's really weird. I remember 2003, 2004, Aaron and I were talking about the little demo thing I had cut. And I remember I was teaching a student who had his uncle was a record producer in LA. And he's like, well, yeah. And I sent him the demo. And he's like, yeah, I love what you're doing. Come out.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, remember this? And I said,
Yep.
yeah. I said, well, yeah, I have to get my stuff in order, and I'll get back in touch. And I called him 3 weeks later, 3 weeks, Brian, right? And he was not interested anymore. He's like, yeah, that was 3 weeks ago. I'm over it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Holy shit, really?
Yeah.
That was a wake up call. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. It's hard keeping their attention for sure. Yeah. I was just talking to a friend of mine about, being a new band coming out now, and there's like, with the technology, there's so like the pool is just so massive, because you never realized how many bands were actually out there, because you're just in your like little microcosm of your scene or your band, and then there's so many opportunities on that end of it, but it's just because of the technology, and any band anywhere could come out and do anything now. It's way harder to get noticed. That's why I really don't think anybody's getting signed, other than, I guess, the digital downloading everything, but that's a whole different episode.
Yeah. The market is oversaturated right now.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I came up when I did. We're like at the tail end of record companies and A&R guys, and still, you didn't have to be Adele to sell 1 million records.
Right. And they don't sell the way they used to. I mean, gosh. And even, okay, so now that you get on a record label, what they're going to give you, and this is on a good day, $8,000 to $10,000 for an album, whereas it used to be, you'd go for 100 grand, 150 grand for an album, even more.
Yeah. Yep.
Now you're lucky to
getting in advance. Yeah. Now they're just like, we'll give you distribution.
Right.
It's period. The end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing nowadays.
Aaron, did you have to have you dealt with labels?
Not directly. No, but I'm well versed in all of this. I've always been interested in the whole spiel in terms of how our environment is changing as a music industry, and what it was and what it is now. It's amazing what's happening. And I'm just trying to figure out, like you were talking about, all the bands that are coming out today, unless you've got some kind of viral hit or something's going on, you're lucky to get yourself known. And it's really hard. Like even touring, like you kind of scratch your head sometimes going, is it worth it? I mean, obviously it's worth it because it's really the only way to get yourself out there.
Right.
And live events are extremely important now. I mean, they just are and always will be. But the expense of going out on tour and what you get back from it, maybe from merch or something like that, you're sitting there going, wow, this is rough. I was listening to an interview with Misha from Periphery, and he basically is like, I don't make any money on tour at all. The only money that I actually make is from my endorsements. That's where I make all my money. That's it.
I thought it was more about the live gigs now. I really thought it was when the tide moved away from a recording career. I thought it was really, you're making all of your income really through the shows,
It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the only thing I could speak to on that is, well, I never made any money really with the bands. Octane made good money, but we were more of a cover band. So
right. That's where money's at.
A regional cover success thing, But other than that, I don't know, because I've just only done hired gun gigs. So I make what I make. It's like, whether there's 5,000 or 50,000 people, it doesn't change a penny for me. So, but some of these bands, I mean, there's money out there. Somebody's making it.
Yeah.
Somebody is making it.
Yeah.
The big box,
But again, going back to the topic of today, money is obviously a motivator, sure, but it all comes down to you as a musician and that drive, man. Like, money's nice, but that's honestly not why I do it. I do it because, man, I love just plucking 6 strings and making sound.
Yeah. And like I said, when I mentioned it earlier, I'm not lying or trying to be modest or anything. I really don't even think about it. It's just, I just did it. You know, I was like, oh, all right. It just pulled me that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything that I was like, oh man, I have this master plan. And if you have a master plan, it's going out the window no matter what, especially with rock and roll.
That's for anything. That was my car gig yesterday. I had a master plan.
Yeah, right.
You know, and something I want to kind of go to too. Like we talked about Randy earlier. You know, I love the stories of Randy Rhoads when he was with Ozzy and touring.
Mm-hmm.
He would always, right, Brian? He would like try to study on the road. He would try to take teachers and classical guys. He was always reinventing his style.
Yeah.
You think it's tougher to do that now, like in sort of the professional playing world of always? I mean, like, do you, like in all the gigs you're doing, do you get a sense of, do I get time to sit down and reevaluate my playing? You know,
yeah. I took a page right out of his book, man. I catch up with guys in different cities all the time and just sit and talk with them either about guitar, or we'll sit and jam. The guys in other bands that we tour with, I'll invite them up on the bus and we'll just jam out in the back lounge of the bus for a while. Like that's the one thing with the whole topic of this show. The one thing that I could definitely say is I was always a sponge and made sure I surrounded myself with guys that were far, far better than me, or that I could learn from. You know what I mean? I was never had a chip on my shoulder about playing or anything. Like, I want to know, like, why. I want to know why I can't do that.
Oh yeah.
I will sit with this guy and like, hey, what are you doing there? Even our other guitar player, Island, he's an amazing player, and we're from just two different schools. He's very finesse and like more John Petrucci-ish, and I'm not that. You know what I mean? But he does these exercises and all this stuff. I was like, oh, what are you doing there? And he was like, oh, this is right out of the John Petrucci book. And now that's a warm up that I've incorporated into mine before I play. You know what I mean? So I'm always looking to learn something. In fact, I'm getting together with a guy who's a neighbor of mine who's an outstanding pedal steel player, and it was just I want to learn how to play pedal steel. But I want to drive the helicopter, man. So
yeah, right.
Trying to figure that out, you know. So
it's funny you mentioned that. I saw something with you in I don't know where this was. One of the NAMM shows. I know you have to go to NAMM once in a while. Where you were test driving a slide. Do you remember? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
It was like a little video of you playing in the slide work, and it was like some kind of like tiny slide. I remember it was, or like a ring slide, or
yeah.
And it was like, so I forget what product it was, and you were like making a comment like how weird it felt to move through it. Well, anyway, the reason I'm bringing it up is because, like, you know, I hadn't talked to you in a while, and I was watching that video. I'm like, damn, he's really good at slide work. Like, where did he pick that up? You know, because I've never been a slide player, right. and that's something like, yeah, I was just curious because, like, I know for me, that's the thing we've talked about in previous episodes. Always trying to find new sounds, new things, new techniques that I know are out there, but have no kind of connection with in any way.
I don't know where it came from either, man. But I'll tell you what, slide guitar, I was like a fish to water with it.
Yeah, really.
It came to me, and I got it quick, and I got to spend a very limited amount of time with Warren Haynes back in like '96.
Awesome. And
he I ended up hanging out with him a couple different times, and he just sat me down. He said, learn how to play it in standard tuning, because that's the hardest. He said the open tunings, all you do is transpose the strings in your head, and the open tunings are all, you know, vertical on it. But he said, learn it in standard tuning. That's the hardest way to learn it. And then everything else will fall into place. So that's what I did. Oh, and then he told me, he was like, just cop licks from guys that you dig. And then I was like, well, what did you listen to? So he told me a few of the guys that he listened to. And from those guys that he listened to, I've kind of found my own, like, guys that that resonated with me as far as slide playing went. So that was really about it. And he just showed me, he was like, you do this with your left hand and you do this with your right hand. And slide playing is actually more right hand than it is left. It's all the muting.
Yeah.
I was able to incorporate everything I learned with classical guitar, because I don't play with a pick when I play slide. So the PIMA, all that, getting proficient with that with classical guitar, I just walked right into slide, and then I did exactly what he told me to do. How much guys you dig? And
How much of the
majority of the session work I do is for slide guitar and for B bender.
No,
I do very, very, very few metal and rock stuff.
That's for Nashville.
Well, just for whoever. Yeah, I mean, because there's not. I actually kind of got a stranglehold on the market in Philadelphia because there's not a whole ton of slide players coming out of
Awesome.
Philly.
I can't do it, man. Aaron, do you play slide? I never even asked you. I mean, for years.
No, I tried. I can't say that I've found that within my playing. I've always been more of a rock kind of guy.
Well, I just mean technically, I can
no.
It's hard to.
It is hard. It's hard to control and try to get it to sing the right way.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, like, because I know I had a lesson a few days ago where a student asked me about slide work, and we talked about left hand muting. Do you find yourself doing any kind of left hand mute control things? Because I know when I played a few times with slide work on I use like my fourth finger. I'd always like use my back three to do dampening of the strings. Like you're mentioning right hand dampening. I never even thought about that. But do you find that left hand plays a role in sliding as well?
So yeah, it just really depends. Like one of the things Haynes told me, he said to play more like Dwayne and kind of hit and Warren style, you mute behind the slide. So if you have it's so funny. I have one in my pocket. But say, all right, so you have
there it is right there, guys. See what I just did? This is important.
I always have it with me. So what I do with these, so I have the slide here, right? And then you're on the fretboard. Yeah, you always to play the tighter stuff, you mute. I use my ring finger. So you always mute behind it. Behind the song.
Right.
So that'll dampen the strings. Now if you take that mute off, like if you take those fingers away from the slide, that's more like the Elmore James stuff. Like if you listen to like Dust My Broom.
Oh yeah, really slinky. Yeah. Screechy, slinky. Yeah, kind of tones. Okay.
Oh yeah, the dampening behind the slide just it eliminates these overtones, and you'll hear it. Like if you just hit one note when you're over the fret wire, and without these your fingers behind it dampening, you'll hear it. There's like these nasty overtones, and it sounds really out of control. Well, you'll hear that a lot. I don't know if it was done on purpose or not, but Page did it in What Is and What Should Never Be. I think he's using a metal slide as well, which that is kind of noisier the way it is.
Right.
And he's not dampening behind the strings, and you can hear all those weird overtones
which still sounds cool, man. Like that.
Oh yeah, it's rad.
Yeah.
Page. It's not gonna not be cool.
Yeah. I've only ever done one. Actually, I have a retired guy that I'm teaching right now, and he wanted to do a little bit of slide, and we did the Stone Temple Pilots tune. What is it?
Big Empty?
No, Interstate Love Song.
Oh yeah.
And funny enough, the song we're doing right now, this is so funny. The song we're doing right now is Far Behind.
Is it really?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, literally, he brought it up. He's like, I want to do Far Behind. So I'm like, okay, funny you should say that.
Speaking of,
Pete did some great guitar work, man. I love that guy's style. Just what he did on the first record. Well, on all the records, he do one thing too, man. Diving into a guy's style like that.
Yeah,
like I spent a lot of time learning Slash and learning Randy Rhoads. I always liked Candlebox, and I love Pete's playing. And before I got the gig, like I'd learned like Far Behind or You or Change or something. But just diving into somebody's style when you're really learning it, because I try to stay as close to what he did on the records as possible.
Right.
For the solos, like a Far Behind solo or the Change solo or the You solo, it's like I can't go off on a tangent, man. To me, the music deserves that respect because of the work that he did, and it was that good.
Yeah.
But yeah, the stuff that he did on Far Behind, man, I love that. And Kevin always tells the story when he does interviews. But what's funny enough is Far Behind that's the demo that's on the album. That's they never re-recorded that when they got their big record deal with Maverick. That's their demo.
Really?
You and Far Behind. There might be one more on the record, but You and Far Behind are demos. That was from like when they did the stuff to try to get signed before.
Yeah, you was my first exposure to those guys.
Yeah,
that was a track.
And what was the other thing with Far Behind? It was just in my head. Yeah, that solo especially, man. It's like I do that one as close to note for note as I can.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I know what it was. The main riff was actually the bass line. Barty Martin wrote that for bass, so that was actually supposed to be the bass line in the song. And Pete said, "Hey man, do you care if I try that on guitar?" So it became the guitar riff, and it's like one of the most iconic guitar riffs from the '90s era. It was funny because it was an actual bass line.
Wow, that's really interesting too. And the way he did it, it was like really open. Like we talked on previous episodes about open voicings and things. You know, open is it on G, right? That open kind of G idea, and just kind of across the strings, kind of tasteful.
Yeah, he does it in the 11th or the 10th fret.
Yeah,
on the 5th string. Yeah, that's where he starts it and slides up. Yeah, and just the tone on that and everything, man. I just really appreciate his playing. That's awesome, man. That's cool to hear that somebody wanted to learn it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thought it was very cool. I was like, wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Students come up with the strangest stuff, man. It's great. It's great. I love it.
After all these years, kids still want to learn that stuff, hey man. Or even older. You said the guy that wanted to learn it was retired, or it was
he's retired. He's retired.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's important too that I think because we're getting up there.
Yeah.
All right, you guys are young. I'll take it. We're getting up there. But it's like it's important that we see that generation of 15-year-olds come up, and it's like, man, I remember being you, and all that kind of stuff. And it's like it's important we kind of pass those things down to them. Because right, no matter if the industry changes or not, doesn't matter. It's gotta raise the new generation of musicians.
Well, and like we were saying, I think the market is so oversaturated right now that 15-year-olds, they don't know what to listen to. Sure, you can go on Spotify or whatever and make a playlist and you'll start hearing some cool stuff, but sometimes the classics that we were brought up with, they may not get the chance to hear that stuff because they're not being directed towards that stuff. Not that they should or shouldn't be listening to it, but for me, that's the foundation of rock and roll. It's important to understand where, grunge was and how we came from grunge through the 90s and going into the 2000s and how that all changed, Y2K and that whole thing that happened around the turn of the century and even going back further, 80s and how it was, hair metal. And before that, it was, this kind of 80s punk rock thing happened. And before that was disco. And before that was, there's just all this stuff that for me and my students, I try to really push this idea of, hey, let's take a look at this decade or let's split it in two and we'll look at the first half of that decade and what came out of that. And we'll look at the second half of that decade and what came out of that. And then that kind of gets them going on this, wow, that's kind of cool. I didn't realize that was happening in this time.
Yeah.
They get a better appreciation.
And that's what, like, when I was coming up, my brothers were into a lot of different kinds of music, and my guitar teachers were into a bunch of different kinds of music. So it kept me staying in it. With another thing to our topic, staying in it, I painted a real wide stroke with everything that I was into. I listened to everything. Like if it's good, it's good. That's pretty much where I'm at with it. Like, and right to, genres that I'm not even really involved in, or like guys that I've heard of. But if I hear it and I like it, I'll say, I dig that. I could get on board with that. And the fact that, to what Tony was saying, and Aaron, what you're saying as well, is about sharing the gift that you have too, and your love for it, that you try to turn other kids onto it, where they'll paint a wide swath too. You know what I mean? Where they'll have an appreciation for even the disco stuff, because there was some great stuff that the beat did back then, you know.
Well, even Kiss was doing some stuff in that era.
Yeah.
That was like, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we even throw in "I Was Made for Loving You" in front of one of our songs when we
Awesome.
when we were
I played that live once. That was an interesting gig, you know. Something you told me, I remember, Brian, something you said when we were kids, which I always liked, and I think up and coming players need to kind of adopt, is that, because I was always into the shred guys growing up, and I remember you used to say something like, when I listen to guitarists, I listen to them from two angles. Remember you used to say this? Like, one is as a player, and then I used to listen to some things as a band.
Yeah.
Right? And you got to hear them from those two perspectives, you know, and that's important, you know, to be able to not only just hear what you're doing, but how what you're doing is kind of like there are guitar bands and there are bands, you know, and how that kind of mix comes together, and just how, like you said, having that wide perspective of hearing things. We talk about active listening a lot in the show, you know, so yeah, I think it's important.
Especially in live performance. If you're not listening to the guys around you, you're done. That's it. May as well just pack up and go home. You know, like just having the wherewithal with stage volume and not overplaying and weaving yourself in and out of the rhythm section. Like, that just comes with mileage. There's no way to teach that really, other than having, you know, telling the kids to be active listeners. You know what I mean? You just got to get out there and do it and make your mistakes early and get it figured out.
Right.
Yeah.
Get hit on the head a little bit. Are you teaching at all? You do any kind of teaching yourself personally? So
yeah, I actually just signed up, and you guys may even want to check this out. I signed up for this app called Meet Hook, MEET Hook, and it's basically what we're doing here, but you do lessons and you fill out a schedule, and anybody that signs up for this app, they take a percentage or whatever, but you fill out a calendar and it shows to all the other app users your availability in the calendar, and you set like your hourly rate, and people say you put out a thing like, I'm gonna be on the Meet Hook app this day, or check the calendar, and they'll sign up for it, and you could do any number of things on it. So I'll do I have my first one coming up where I'm just going to do I blocked out an hour, so it's going to be 20 minutes of just songwriting discussion.
Wow.
So it's not even a guitar lesson. And then there's another one that I'm going to do on public relations and marketing, because me and my wife own a PR company and we handle a lot of bands.
That's awesome.
So, and I do a lot of the research work for her and a lot of soliciting when I'm on the road, getting bands to join our roster, you know. So I'm going to do a whole hour on that. But then, I'll do I'll do the guitar lessons as well, like half-hour guitar lessons. But there's a lot of guys on it, like Anton Fig and Carmine Apiece. There's a lot of dudes that, like, world-class guys that you just look at their calendar. It's like, oh, I feel like talking to Mike Inez from Alice in Chains today. Boom, and then you just schedule the time, you pay the money, it's on your credit card, and you have a one-on-one with Mike Inez or
Aaron.
It's pretty badass, dude.
That's cool.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for that, Brian. That's awesome.
Yeah. And my friend Anthony, he just he's the guy that started it, and he owns or runs the drum. It used to be the Drum Collective in New York City, where they just get every world-class drummer in there to do master classes and stuff. So he basically just took this master class and made it an app. So he has a lot of like world-class players in there, but he's opened it up to bass and guitar and everything else. Now it's not just drums, but it was a really good idea. And he still does the master classes in New York. And my buddy Mike was working for him and helping him out with this app. And he was like, dude, you should sign up for this thing. These guys and it's great money, good extra money for sure. You know, and you just set your own rate, and they take a piece of it at the end, but it's just really interactive. And I mean, it puts you one-on-one with like your heroes, basically.
Yeah.
As you're talking,
posters on my wall. I was like, I'd love to meet him.
As you're talking, I'm orchestrating the next 5 years of my life. In my head. Like, I have no idea. Like, I'm gonna go upstairs now, honey. I think I have a plan. Right?
Yeah. For $5,000, I could hang out with Slash for 30 minutes. I don't think it's that much, but yeah, but there are guys that are on there that are, you know, obviously like Vinny Colaiuta, and there's some monster guys on this app. And it's like, shit, I'd like to get in on his songwriting discussion or his drum discussion, or, you know.
Yeah, that's very cool.
You could do it for any of them. Yeah, probably worth checking out. Or even you could become a host and do your lessons that way.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I'm thinking it might be something. You know,
yeah. Yep.
Get involved there that way. So it's go ahead.
No, it's new. So it just launched a couple months ago. We're actually me and my wife's coming here doing the PR for it now. So just helping to get it out to the masses. He bought a bus, like a big tour bus, and wrapped it. So they're doing like a whole city thing where he's connecting up with a bunch of our buddies that tour and guys that are on the app that he's going to go city to city. It's pretty interesting. Cool concept.
Very much.
One of the things that Aaron and I get a lot when we talk about is from our students. We get, right, Aaron, we get this kind of thing, like especially the young ones will come up, and Brian could probably, sort of parlay some of this knowledge here to the up and coming generation. Like, can you make it in the industry today? And if so, like, how do you do it?
Oh yeah, of course. Hey man, look, where I measure success in the music industry, and when we were kids, it was like, I'll be a rock star, I have all these chicks and cars and houses. How I measure success in the industry, if you're supporting yourself on music, and even if it's part-time, if you're making money doing anything that has anything to do with music and rock and roll, you're successful. That's where I'm at with it. I mean, you don't need to be famous or rich or anything. The fact that I was able to just stay in rock and roll and guitar and music and make money doing it as a full-time job, and I haven't lost my house yet. Yeah, to me, you're successful in it.
Well, all I have to do is really just keep that room. The rest of the house goes. Just keep that room.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, if I jettison that wall, I could at least survive for a little while. But yeah, I really do, man. I'm not lying. It's or being like, I like fibbing about it. You know what I mean? I really do think that if you make any kind of money doing anything with music, you're successful at it. You know, because people come to you, they want to learn what you know, like what Aaron knows, what Tony knows, what I know. Like make a couple bucks doing that, man. You're successful.
And ultimately, there's nothing else. I mean, I can't imagine myself or you or Tony sitting in a cubicle. I mean, I just couldn't.
I can't do it, man. I'm just not wired that way. Like some people can do it and they make a great living at it. Probably
power to them.
They make a lot more money than me in certain cases, but I really never gave a shit about the money, to be honest with you. But when I actually made money doing it, I was like, I could play my guitar and make some money. I was all for it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of it, it's really about, doing what you love, and doing it. And so, again, like with my students, even in my literature students, we talk about this, about how we measure success, and it's got to be highly personal. It has to be, we can't have this large scale, success thing that everybody, like, one size fits all. Cause I think that was the danger of us when we were kids. Excuse me, is that, we thought that to be successful, you had to be on MTV. And I think it was part of what the culture was, propagating with videos. And when we were listening to Appetite for Destruction and those albums came out, it's like, yeah, that's it. If we don't get there, then we didn't make it, Right. And now it's like, if you're not on Wikipedia, you're nobody, what I mean? Because like that's the measure of success now, you know what I mean? But really, I think it's a matter, if you have a personal measure of that, and if you're happy doing it, then isn't that what it's about? Yeah,
you can't measure your own thing against everybody else's. It's good if they motivate you, though, because seeing Guns N' Roses on MTV, I was like, that's what I want to do. Yeah. Even that long ago, I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. As far as just playing guitar for a living, I mean? Then it was like, oh, that'd be cool if I got on MTV. But yeah, I guess that's the motivator. Like when you're younger, I mean, you're a kid, man. We didn't know any better. It's just
yeah. Rent. What's that?
Yeah,
doesn't make sense,
So here's a question in terms of motivation. Have you ever found yourself in a spot throughout your life where you may be at your lowest and don't find that motivation? And if so, what do you do to try to get yourself pumped back up?
Yeah, that happens a lot. It's not even just one time. Like that'll happen when you feel uninspired. A lot of times, probably the biggest cure for it for me was I'll go and see a concert. I'll go and see a band, like whether it's a local one or not. But normally, if I could get out to see like a bigger band and just be like, all right, this is why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it happened to me, I don't know, maybe about 8 or 9 years ago, like before anything happened with Candlebox and whatnot. Just in a rut as far as trying to come up with new material, in a rut playing wise, like just trying to get better on guitar. And I went and saw AC/DC, and I was like, oh my God.
Oh, right. Yeah.
This is why I'm doing it. And it's like I just came out of there recharged and just went on a tear after
those guys will motivate you to build a house after you come out of that.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I saw them during the what was that, Ball Breaker tour.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, come on. They're just great. They have
I saw them on that Black Ice tour and they just ripped my head off. And I left that concert just completely stoked.
For me, it's on the angle of the listening part. Like I think when I feel sort of in the slump, which is a lot, I tend to put records on and I tend to listen to new things, and that gets me going. Like last week we talked about world music. I think that's for me is the motivator now for me is finding new things I don't know.
Yeah. What about you, Aaron?
Same. I love going to live events, playing. I think for me, when I'm feeling in a rut, like with guitar or writing or something like that, I will often go to a different instrument. Like I'll sit down to the drums for a good hour and just kind of feel, just get out of my box and just kind of say, okay, let's just try something different. Let's just try to push myself in a different way. And then that'll usually spark some kind of creativity or some idea. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I need to go to the other room and pick up the guitar. And I've got something.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Tony, when you're writing, will you start with guitar or a different instrument? Like, will you pop over on something different? Like
it's been changing. So for me, the writing thing is the focus of everything I do right now. It took me probably 15 years, 20 years, 15 years to get to the realization that I think I was built more as a writer than a performer. I've said this in past episodes and things, and I'm great with that. The problem is writing is one of the most difficult things to do. Yeah, in some ways, and I don't know much I couldn't speak volumes like you could to performance, but I really think writing is a very lonely, difficult job. Even Stephen King says that in literature, but in music, it's hard work. You guys know it's hard work to put stuff together and make it kind of click and connect. What I found is that there was a phase where I would go through writing from guitar angles first and come up with really good stuff. Now I'm finding that it's to a point where if I write from a guitar perspective, I'm just basically just spinning the wheel and hitting things that I've done years past. Right. I think I really need to have more of an eclectic sense of how to start the writing genesis, that process. And I'll be kind of honest with you, like a more simple, direct answer to this question is I write in my head now. Mm-hmm. Right. I write everything up here first, and then I put it down. Something I learned a few years ago from Paul Barsom about how to audiate things quickly. So when I write things now, like you see me, I have sketch pads everywhere, and I'm hearing certain phrases and I'm writing some things out. I wrote a notation. I kind of made this little notation system for myself where it looks like what do they call a thing? That Morse code, So I have little dots and dashes that represent chord notes and different movements. And I just write little phrases in a notebook. And I think, what do I want that thing to be? Do I hear that thing as more of a violin piece? Do I hear it as something like that? Ultimately, it all comes out in the guitar at some point. You know what I mean? And I found this thing too. I'm just better at guitar music obviously. So when I sit down, I try to write computer stuff. You know, I remember there was a point where I was writing some computer music for because I wanted to get into the game industry for composing, right? I was doing it, but it didn't have any kind of mojo behind it.
Right.
So it's weird, you know, it's a really kind of weird thing to write and think about how we start that writing process, you know.
How about you, Brian? Do you primarily write on guitar all the time, or?
No, it'll differ for me. I'll just have something pop in my head, and I'd say 9 to 8 times out of 10, I get a drum beat. I'll just have a drum beat in my head and tap it out, and then I kind of just start from there, and I'll just put something on, like a real rough sketch of it on the DAW, and then I just start from there, and then like it'll kind of unfold itself. But there's been other times where I just can't. I had like a vocal melody for a chorus, and then the rest of the song just unfolded around it. Yeah. If I'm gonna write on guitar, the only thing that I really work out on the guitar is the like the actual chords. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. Yeah, doing the harmonic structure.
Yeah. So I'll really work the chords out, and then kind of the riffs and the like overdub stuff, all the accoutrement kind of fleshes itself out as we go.
Yeah.
You know, and then I won't touch solos until later on. And I kind of do the Gilmore approach with solos, where I'll lay 3 down just off the top of my head. Like every once in a while, it'll be something that I really work out. But most of the time, I'll just, whatever the 3 are that come to my head, like I'll do it on this section of fretboard, that section of fretboard, and then do something completely different. And then I mix all 3 together. I'll piece them together, listen back to it, and then work it out that way. Then record 3 of those. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
So then that's how I end up coming up with the solos for that stuff. But yeah, just the writing, I really do start with the beat, like more of a rhythm,
right,
type thing before I go.
Yeah, the foundation.
Yeah. Yep.
Aaron, you've been doing a lot of written stuff lately too, right? I mean, so I mean, are you doing?
I'm always playing.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like your writing approaches, are you sort of, do you have any particular angle you start with? I mean, we've talked about this before too, but is there anything?
Not necessarily. My writing style has always been like all over the place. Only because I try to avoid that rut as much as possible. I know it's coming, so in order to avoid that, it doesn't matter what it is. I'll try to, like I said, I'll go to the drums and just play the drums for an hour, and I'll just see what that brings. I'll go to the piano and I'll sit down at the piano for an hour and see what that brings, or sort of that
collaborative thing like you were talking about.
Right. Or I'll start. Yeah, absolutely. I'll take an idea to a bunch of guys and say, hey, what can we make of this? And all of a sudden it becomes something much grander than I ever would have thought. Yeah. So my writing style, or I'm kind of working on an idea. Maybe it's, I'm going to go into this playing 11/16. Here we go. This is my idea. I'm going to play with this idea, and how can I come up with something that's actually going to sound pretty decent in 11/16, not just, okay, this is just an exercise in 11/16.
Yeah, right.
I got to make it musical,
Yeah, right.
Right. So I will generally just try a bunch of things versus going down one route over and over and over again, because I will, like you had said before, Tony, I'll end up recreating something that I've already done in the past, and that's for me a killer. I mean, I just don't enjoy that.
I mean, people like to hear, I think, when you have a style and a voice, I think people like to hear just reiterations of what you've already done, because it's kind of like watching another episode of a show or something like that. But for me, I don't have an interest in that, writing wise. I always want the next thing to be fresh. Not easy to do, but that's the angle I go at.
Yeah, and I think I think Jerry Cantrell is a great example of that, where the guy constantly is figuring out a way to reinvent the music he writes, but it still sounds like him.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Right. Retain that signature.
That's one of that. I mean, that's it, man. That's Valhalla right there, is attaining that. It's that. And then as a guitar player, like when you when you hear him, you know it's Zach. When you hear it, you know it's Steve Vai or Eric Clapton. You know what I mean? Like that's the pinnacle of all that. You know.
I think at the end of my playing career, if I could, whenever that is and whenever it is, if someone could sit there and say, I play a lick or hear a lick played back that I played, and someone had said, that's something I know Scults is, that's the Scults lick, that's what I want.
Yeah.
I haven't found it after 30 some years on the instrument. How about you guys? I've not found it. I've not found the signature sound yet. It's elusive.
Yeah, you know, I spent so much time learning other people's shit.
Right.
I didn't have a whole lot of time to do that. You know, other than, you know, Octane and the records that I made. But yeah, I spent just more time but that's the rub of a hired gun too, is you're constantly learning other people's stuff. So, which I don't mind, but yeah, it does take a little bit of a longer route to find your own voice when you're constantly learning. But
that's important though. You have to.
I do learn a lot. I'll tell you, I'm doing a gig coming up, and I had to learn a couple three Steely Dan songs for this gig I'm doing with Skunk Baxter, and
really
digging into the Steely Dan stuff it's absolutely mind bending. I couldn't believe how involved stuff is, and then like really, you know, because I have it on the studio monitors, hearing what Skunk did. It's like buried in the lower left speaker of the rhythm. You know what I mean? It's not just like reeling in the ears. I'm listening to the shit that he has going on the rhythm guitar, because obviously I'm not playing lead with that dude there, you know? So I'm listening to this stuff. It's mind bending what these guys were doing. So that was actually a huge motivation for writing. Like I got done learning that song and I sat down and wrote a riff.
Awesome. Yeah, right.
It had nothing to do with reeling in the ears, but it motivated me to. It's like, oh, it's a pretty cool riff. So I sat and recorded it. Just put in the vault.
Yeah. We were talking with those guys not too long ago about how just complex, but at the same time how tasty and
tasty and just consumable.
Yeah, right.
Like just you want to listen to it.
Oh yeah.
You want to press repeat.
Oh yeah.
That's the trick.
Yeah. One of my all-time favorites, Steely Dan. Walter Becker is just he's great. Donald Fagen. Oh, so good.
Good.
So it looks like we're coming to the end. Is there anything closing to our listeners?
No, it was all good on my end, man. Maybe just check out the website, brianquinnguitar.com.
We'll do. Yeah, you guys come out with any kind of new material? You guys release anything through the Candlebox end or through any of the other projects you're doing? Any things you could be on the lookout for?
Yeah, well, Candlebox will be back in the studio. We're supposed to be in 2 weeks, but I just got an email that's 86th for now. So I think, but before the new year, if we're waiting to find out if we're going down to South America again in late November. So if we don't go down there, I have a feeling I'll be out in Los Angeles writing with the guys, because all my bandmates are out there. I'm the only one out here. So yeah, we'll have some new music coming up, hopefully for the new year.
Wow, that's awesome. Exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait. That last record that I made with them, that was the oddest recording experience. I mean, we finished that whole record in 2 weeks.
You're talking about disappearing into airports, that one?
Yeah. Like we were doing pre-production and scratch tracking and writing all at once. Like that whole record was done in 14 days.
Wow.
Soup to nuts.
So it'd be nice that so you plan on taking more breath on this next one, and like.
Well, I actually wouldn't mind making another record like that, because it was so stream of consciousness. It's like everything I've ever learned on guitar, forget it, and you just played from instinct, and it was killer. It's the only record I've ever made that I could actually listen to.
Really? Wow, that's cool.
That doesn't drive me nuts. That like I spent months making it and this and that. It was just the most liberating record I ever made, as far as guitar wise and writing wise, because by the time I got a cohesive mix of that record back in, I think we recorded it in September, and I didn't hear like any kind of cohesive mixes of it until December-ish. Mm-hmm. I had to listen to it because I had no idea what I played, and it was great. So the engineer sent me a copy of the record with just with my parts and my overdubs, like jacked up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was listening to it. I was like, did I play that? But it was me. He was like, that's you, dude. We didn't overdub anything on you. So yeah, I had to go back and like learn what I did. But that was just, I was like, why would I even do that? But that was the best part of making that record. I do hope we make another record like that, because it was a lot of fun.
So I think it kind of gets to the heart of too, like what we have talked about in past, that you all the study, all the years you put in, when you're forced in situations where you have to, instinctually let it out, it's there. It's
you
all
just
part of
an instinct. And
yeah.
Kevin still says it's his, and he I know he's not lying. He still says "Disappearing in Airports" is his favorite Candlebox record that he's ever done. I think because of the way we did it.
Because the process. Excellent. Brian Quinn, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks,
great
Mel.
stuff.
Good time, man.
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Hopefully we do this again. You're welcome anytime.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. I'd love to do it again. That was a blast.
Yeah,
sure.
We'll catch up. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me. That was a blast, man. I don't get a chance to chat about all this stuff too often.
Yeah. It's our pleasure.
Our gentlemen, we'll have a great week.
Yeah.
We'll be in touch soon.
All right, fellas.
See ya. I'm trying to find my button. See, this is always awkward. Every time where the hell is my button? There it is. All right. See you guys. Bye. Bye.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna stop this. Like my thankful pillows, the only thing I got to show for myself. How was your party last night? How was your birthday celebration thing?
Good. I kept the lid on it for the most part. It was all right. I wanted to make sure I was up and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for this. But
we were kind of hoping it, all the audiences would see what it's like, to have just coming off a thing, and doing a morning radio show.
Yeah, have the audience see what it looks like for a grown man to be throwing up on a podcast.
I didn't want to say it in so many words, but since you brought it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
That was a good time, though, man. It's good. Good birthday. I got good friends. I'm very thankful.
I'll tell you this quick story. And Brian knows because he called me on the back end of this yesterday. So I went yesterday to try to buy a car, because my car is shot. I got to understand that my wife and my father-in-law, who passed, like the two of them are like master negotiators. So every time we go buy vehicles, they would literally walk into these places and they'd say, okay, how sharp is your pencil? Because we're going to be like negotiating these prices down. And they would spend like hours with these people and get them to like where they wanted them. And then they would do this thing. They would say like, we're not going to do this. We're going to get up and go down to the place down the street. And they would like chase after them. Even my wife is really good at this. So yesterday I said to Trace, I said, you know what? I got this today. All right. So we go into this place and we do the same. We do the thing, right? And I'm sitting there doing my thing and get them where we want them. And I said, you know what? I'm just not feeling it. I said, come on, Trace, let's go to the one down the street. And the manager across me says, thanks for coming in. Have a good day. And I feel like a jackass now, because not only do I not have a new car, but I look like a shithead in front of my wife. And then you know what I do? I stand up, they give you the free complimentary coffees, right? I'm actually stand up and taking the coffee cups and throwing them in the trash for him. Right. And clean up his desk area. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me?
And then you went home with the family truckster.
The Dave Mustaine vocal exercise.
Yeah.